Ever since Grand Admiral Thrawn was revealed for Star Wars Unlimited, I've been hearing the same thing over and over again. Why not just play Boba Fett? But while Boba Fett may be a more competitively balanced leader in Star Wars Unlimited, especially in the early Spark of Rebellion meta, what if there was a scenario in which playing Grand Admiral Thrawn was better than playing Boba Fett? That is the question that we are looking to answer here today at Roll On Gaming. Welcome back to the newest episode of the Thrawnicles, the series where we attempt to create the perfect Grand Admiral Thrawn deck. And today, we are pairing Grand Admiral Thrawn with Vigilance. Now, if you remember the last time we used Grand Admiral Thrawn with Command, the strategy there was to stall out the game as much as possible until our big units could hit the board and clean house. Vigilance allows us to do something very similar with one potential change. In Vigilance, more so than in Command, you can remove your opponent's units from the board entirely rather than relying on having to exhaust them. We still have the exhaust ability from Grand Admiral Thrawn. We still have a way to exhaust units with other cards in our deck. However, I think we can more consistently just take our opponent's units out before we have to delete them with our own units with Vigilance, and that would give us the edge in this potential scenario. So let's take a look at the deck and see what I'm talking about. As you can see with our current build in Thrawn Vigilance, there are some familiar favorites. Boba Fett is there because he synergizes so well with Thrawn's ability. We've got Sentinels in the ground arena with both the Cell Block Guard and the Academy Defense Walker. We have Ambush and additional damage potentially provided with Bosk, and additional damage again with the Death Trooper. And then we've got some space units that are helping us out. 7th Fleet Defender, hopefully helping out our trades because he comes in shielded. Inferno 4 providing us an early space unit that can control what we draw and also can control how we use Thrawn's ability. And then the Cartel Spacer, which could potentially help us exhaust units early in the game. But when it comes to exhausting units, we have largely gone away from that strategy in favor of removing units directly. So what do I mean by that? Well, No Good to Me Dead is still there, but it's only down to a 2 of. That's a fantastic card that's going to allow us to deal with some of the bigger units or leaders that we can't get rid of right away. But aside from that, you're not seeing any Asteroid Sanctuary. What you're seeing instead is Shoot First. Shoot First is there to help us keep our units on the board when defeating our opponent's units. Obviously, Waylay removes a unit from the board. That's still a cunning staple. We've also got cards like Takedown, which belongs in any Vigilance deck, and then units that defeat units when they're played, like Count Dooku and the Avenger. But I want to talk about 2 additional new cards that are in the deck, starting with Power of the Dark Side. This is a 3-cost Vigilance Villainy event that says an opponent chooses a unit they control, defeat that unit. Now, this is going to provide us potentially with some early game removal or some high value removal when an opponent has one massive unit on the board after we've gotten rid of some of their other units, and we can get rid of it with Power of the Dark Side. I also want to talk about Jabba the Hutt. I have Jabba in here as a 2 of, mostly because we only have 6 trick events in the deck. We have Waylay and Shoot First. Jabba, when he hits the table, is going to allow us to dig for those additional ways for us to remove our opponent's units. So this is the build that we're going with currently, and we'll see how it fares into our opponent. But before we get into some gameplay, let's talk about some cards that just missed the cut in our Thrawn Vigilance build, starting with Vanquish. I think this is a card that's only going to go up in value as more cards are revealed for Star Wars Unlimited. This is a card where if you have been spending a lot of your resources getting rid of your opponent's units and not dropping powerful units onto your side of the board, as long as it's not a leader, this card is able to defeat that unit. This can also be helpful when getting rid of a unit in a different arena that you're not really focused on. So look for Vanquish to potentially provide some value as we get closer to the release of Spark of Rebellion. I also want to talk about Surprise Strike, because Surprise Strike is a really versatile card in Cunning. The extra 3 power that you get from Surprise Strike could go either towards potentially defeating a larger unit or increasing your tempo into hitting the base. So Surprise Strike is one that I definitely thought hard about, ultimately decided to keep it out, but it's one that I could definitely see in a sideboard for this deck, and also could potentially make a Grand Admiral Thrawn deck that much scarier. And then Entrenched. Entrenched is a great upgrade. Again, the ability to provide +3/+3 for only 2 is something that can both help you out when trying to get rid of larger units and also help you survive by keeping your opponent's units from attacking your base. I really like Entrenched as an upgrade. I just didn't think it fit this particular build. That's not to say it's not a super valuable card. I do think you're going to see a lot of Entrenched in the competitive meta, but I think it just missed the cut here and would be a potential sideboard option for this version of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, some of you who are watching this video, thank you for watching by the way, are saying, hey Kevin, at the beginning of this video you said that there was a scenario in which Thrawn was better than Boba Fett. What is that scenario? I think specifically in the pairing of Villainy, Cunning, and Vigilance, Thrawn has the upper hand against Boba Fett. Now, we've already seen that Boba Fett has proven his worth when paired with the other aspects. Aggression, command, double cunning. Boba Fett definitely has an argument in all three of those pairings to put himself a leg up over Grand Admiral Thrawn. But when it comes to cunning and vigilance, I believe that Grand Admiral Thrawn has more tools at his disposal with his ability and his ability to stay patient to be able to deal more with your opponent's threats than Boba Fett. Thus, when you're trying to control the tempo of the game and control your opponent's board, Thrawn has the ability to be more patient and to be more adaptable in those scenarios. And I think that gives him the edge in this specific color pairing over Boba Fett. So to test this theory, my co-host Corwin and I decided to record a game using online proxies in which we put my Thrawn Vigilance build up against a competent leader like Luke Skywalker to see if it would hold up. That game took 55 minutes, which is not something that I'm going to subject you to. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a little bit of a highlight reel, show some of the key moments of the game and how the deck performed in those moments. So let's take a look. So we're starting here in round 4. You can see my opponent has a shielded Kanan that he just played this phase on his side of the board and nothing else. That is because I've been actively removing units with events with most of my resources. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to play Takedown on that Kanan to keep Corwin's side of the board clear and have a clear path for my units to continue dealing damage. As you can see, my base has taken no damage. He's going to have an empty board, and I've already dealt 9 damage to his base with both Greedo and the Cartel Spacer. So things are looking pretty good early as I'm continuing to remove units aggressively. Now we skip ahead to the next round. Corwin is about ready to deploy his Luke Skywalker leader into the ground arena, but I have an ace in the hole in my bag thanks to Grand Admiral Thrawn's ability. I know that there is a waylay at the top of my deck, so I'm going to attack into Luke with Greedo to deal 3 damage. As a result, I'm going to use Greedo's ability to discard waylay, dealing 2 additional damage, and that is going to put Luke in lethal range for an attack by Grand Admiral Thrawn. And there's nothing Corwin can do about it because he's used all his resources. So he's just going to be forced to attack into my base and then lose Luke the round that he gets into play, which is really great for me. Now, this is where it gets a little scary and a little tricky because Corwin has unit Luke Skywalker out on his side. And anytime you see unit Luke, it's one of the best units in the game. It's not something you want to be facing down. I do have a Sentinel on board in Academy Defense Walker. Corwin could choose to attack into that and restore 3, but he's worried about Boba Fett then using his attack ability to delete Luke Skywalker without taking any damage. So instead of you getting the restore, he is going to play Takedown on Boba Fett, thus removing that threat from my side of the board. But that is going to cost him some value because I know, once again, at the top of my deck is a card that's going to help me out in this scenario. I have an Avenger at the top of my deck, which is a 9-cost card, and is going to let me exhaust that Luke Skywalker and not let him restore and take out my Academy Defense Walker. So that unit gets to stick around for just a little bit. As a result, he is going to choose to use his Energy Conversion Lab to buff Luke Skywalker for the following round by giving it 2 experience tokens. And that Wing Leader is going to attack into my Cartel Spacer. Both of my Cartel Spacers are damaged, so he's going to take the higher value Cartel Spacer and get rid of it, which leaves me in a position that the only thing I can do in space is to trade my other Cartel Spacer into what remains of Bright Hope. So I'm going to do that, which clears the space arena for both of us. All he can do now is take the initiative because Luke did not come out this round. When he does that, I have cards in my hand that are going to be very helpful. I am going to attack with the Academy Defense Walker into Luke Skywalker, thus putting him in range of another takedown. So Luke goes away, which is great for me because now, once again, his side of the board is clear and I can fill my side of the board with a cell block guard, which is a Sentinel, and then draw that Avenger for the next round. Now, obviously, I have to resource the power of the dark side in order to be able to play the Avenger, but I'm in a position now where whatever he plays, I can remove it when I play the Avenger with the when played ability. So we're going to skip ahead here 2 rounds later. Corwin has initiative. I have Avenger on board. I'm ready to attack with it, but this is when I'm wishing that I had entrenched in my deck, because for 2 costs, he's going to entrench my Avenger, and I'm going to have almost no value with it to start. So I go into scramble mode here. I'm going to play Jabba the Hutt to try to find something to help me deal with this Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm not going to find it. I'm going to get a shoot first, which, because of my cell block guard and my Jabba the Hutt not having super high attack values, is not going to help me get rid of Obi-Wan in this instance. And down comes a second Luke Skywalker, thus getting rid of my cell block guard. So things are pretty scary here. I am definitely on my back foot and trying to find a way to stay in this game, because quite frankly, it's looking pretty bad with the units that I have on board and not being able to attack with Avengers. So I'm going to bring out Death Trooper. I'm going to do the damage to Jabba and also to Luke Skywalker to hopefully put Luke into takedown range for later. He is then going to turn around and attack into my base with Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan has not attacked yet, and he wants to make sure to get that 4 damage across. So he's going to do that, and I am going to take initiative. Not having a ton else to do here. Once I take the initiative, my opponent is going to pass, and I am going to draw up, and I'm going to draw into Count Dooku, which is going to help me out a little bit because he is able to defeat units when he hits the board. So we skip ahead to the next round. I've already attacked into Obi-Wan with Jabba the Hutt, putting him in Dooku range. Corwin, instead of attacking with Obi-Wan, chooses to attack with Luke. He does get the restore and the 6 damage, but he's probably worried about a takedown, so he wants to make sure he gets that Luke to do some damage and get some value out of that restore. So I don't have a takedown, obviously, but I do have Count Dooku. So by playing Count Dooku, I get rid of the Sentinel and also make it so that he does not get to add 2 more damage to his attack with Luke Skywalker by adding the experience before he attacks. So pretty excited about that. Dooku comes in with a shield, which again is super useful. And so now we find ourselves in a little bit of a better spot because Obi-Wan Kenobi is no more, and now I have a bit of a clearer path to my opponent's base. Now, we skip ahead even further. Luke now has a Jedi lightsaber on him, which is very bad. I have the initiative here, though. I'm going to check and use Thrawn's ability on the top of both decks, and I have drawn into No Good to Me Dead. So again, this was a 2 of, but this is one time where it becomes a very useful card and comes in handy, because now Luke is exhausted for 2 rounds. He can't get that restore. He can't get the value out of both the Jedi lightsaber and the experience tokens on him. And then once we move further on into the round, I'm going to put the cell block guard out there just to protect my base a little bit. Dooku has already attacked into Luke to take him up to even more damage. He's at 10 damage at this point out of 12. And then Corwin is going to make what I think is a mistake here by giving my Avenger a target to hit. He's going to play home 1, bringing back a wing leader, which is going to add even more experience to Luke Skywalker to help with Luke's survivability. But this gives me something to attack with Avengers. So I'm going to go ahead and take out his home 1, taking 7 damage on my own, which is not something that phases me because I have an entrenched on. With Avengers ability, I get to make him choose a unit to discard. He is going to get rid of the wing leader he just played. Again, he already got value out of it, so not a ton of a decision there. But then we move on to the next round, and I draw into another Avenger, which is great for me because not only do I have that, but I also have that shoot first in my hand that I drew with Jabba the Hutt. He plays wing leader to add even more experience tokens to Luke, but what he doesn't realize is with Luke at 10, the only additional health he has is the 6 experience tokens, keeping him alive, which I can hit with a shoot first and Count Dooku. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoot first into Luke Skywalker with Dooku, thus removing Luke and his Jedi lightsaber and keeping Count Dooku on the board. Something that my opponent certainly did not anticipate and ended up being a very big swing into my favor. Because again, I'm at 19 damage on my base. He's only at 7, but now he's forced to unfavorably trade into my cell block guard with the Battlefield Marine. I then attack his wing leader and make him defeat Yoda as a result. So I'm feeling pretty good here. Now, I still can't attack with the Avenger, but as we move forward to the following round, I have dealt some damage to his base, and he is in a spot where he is going to play Obi-Wan Kenobi to try to protect his base even further. But I have a second Avenger in hand, so I can go ahead and play that Avenger, thus getting rid of my entrenched Avenger and forcing him to defeat one of his units. He's going to defeat the Battlefield Marine because he wouldn't defeat the Sentinel that's protecting his base. But suddenly, with 17 damage on his base, I now am showing lethal in the space arena, which is an arena in which he has nothing. And Obi-Wan Kenobi can't Sentinel the space arena. So this turned into GG's for my opponent. He didn't have an answer for the space arena, and as a result, we were able to outlast Luke Skywalker. So this is what it comes down to with Grand Admiral Thrawn in Vigilance. I was able to protect my base from taking a decent amount of damage by defeating units early and by exhausting and defeating units late. You notice I had 11 damage remaining on my base. That very easily could have been taken up by a couple Luke attacks or some attacks from early units. That would have added up to 11 very quickly, and the additional restore that potentially Luke would have gotten, or damage that would have been prevented by Obi-Wan Sentinel, I might not have been able to break through and get 25 points of damage onto Corwin's base. So Grand Admiral Thrawn allowed me to be patient and allowed me to wait until I could defeat enough units to break through. And this is what I'm talking about with this deck. The ability to adapt, the ability to not just exhaust, but remove. This is why I think Grand Admiral Thrawn has a real chance of doing some damage when paired with Vigilance. And that's the deck. What did you guys think of it? What changes would you make to it? Does Thrawn actually have an upper hand over Boba Fett when it comes to pairing with Vigilance? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for continuing to tune in to the Thrawnicles. We are having a lot of fun experimenting with Grand Admiral Thrawn, and even though he might not be the best leader out there, I do think he has some potential, and his day will come. So keep tuning in if you're interested, and if there's things that you would want to see us build with Grand Admiral Thrawn, again, let us know in the comments. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And as always, long live the Empire.